we're getting lots of views on our videos, and we're getting lots of great comments and questions.
Absolutely.
And so probably the most common questions we get are still on slicing and why they slice.
Turns out there's a lot of slicers out there.
Yeah, or they've watched our video and they say, hey, you know, I think this is what I'm doing, and why, if I change my stance, does that sometimes help? And so we're going to answer some of those questions and a lot more, and keep those questions coming. That we love them, and I like answering them. So
Absolutely, keep
hope
asking
you learn
them.
something from them. So.
I'm learning just from asking
well,
you about
well,
them.
I learn too. Makes me think. So I like thinking. So
that's great. All right, we got a great question here from ATB about slicing, which is something I've struggled with a lot myself as well.
And probably 90% of the people I work with.
Absolutely. So his question's mostly about closing his stance off in a tournament to make sure he doesn't slice, but how can you maybe adjust that when you're practicing and not have to do that for every single swing?
Yeah, he mentioned that he didn't know why he sliced, but after looking at one of our earlier videos and talking about why players slice, that he figured that the club was getting behind him too much on his takeaway, and then it never could catch up, and so he would always slice. And how he corrected that in tournaments was by closing his stance 45 degrees. And why that works is because at a preset with his feet and his hips, this club really stays in front of his chest a lot better than from a normal stance. So he's on the right track on learning how to fix it. So I would tell you when you practice on the range to continue to have that 45-degree closed stance. I've actually had players in a 90-degree closed stance to where they set up like this and they take this club back this way and they hit it. I had one really good friend of mine that he played golf that way because that was literally the only way he could hit it straight. And he wasn't bashful about what he looked like. All he cared about where his ball went. Because when he took a traditional stance, the ball would go 45 degrees to the right with every iron that he hit. And so he literally stood like this and played golf for several years. So what you do is, if that helps you to hit it straight by closing your stance dramatically, when you get to the range, start that way. Whether you're using a 7-iron or a driver, it doesn't matter. You just need to make sure the club head still goes back on the target line when you do that drill and not your feet line inside. And then you should start to hook it from there. If I take an iron and I stand like that, and from a very closed position, I'm going to hit a hook. So it didn't hook a lot, but normally it would really hook off the world as I go back. Oh, there it was better. It came up that time. So you'll see I should hit a hook from that position. And so, and you should too. So if it's going straight from that exaggerated stance, just keep hitting balls until you see that trajectory, and then you can just gradually open your stance more back to a traditional parallel to the target line stance, and you should be okay.
This is a good one from Vic Peanut. So he's talking about having a lot of misses. Sometimes they go dead straight, sometimes they go low left hook, and then sometimes it's a high slice. So of course we just want to minimize our misses to at least just fight one miss as much as we can in the golf swing. The golf game, it's hard enough if you're missing it all over the place. We also talked a little bit about knowing the correct distance away from the ball, which is something that you're a big fan of, getting dialed in.
It is. There's nothing worse than having a two-way miss, high right and low left. Whenever I have players that tell me that, the first thing I look at instructor-wise is their distance away from the ball. And it's usually driver that's the most dramatic, high right and low left, and sometimes straight. If you want to be a good player and shoot good scores, having predictable ball flight's the most important thing. I know great players that hit 20-yard, 30-yard fades on every shot, but it's every shot so they can aim left and It goes right down the middle of the fairway, or they have a 20 or 30-yard hook. You can be a really good player with a lot of curve on your ball, but it has to curve the same direction every time. And so when we're missing it one way on one swing and the other way on the next swing, you can't shoot good scores that way. And when somebody tells me that they have a miss right and left, especially with driver, if that's a comment with driver, I almost always find that their distance away from the ball is incorrect. And I've mentioned this before, but if you're too close to the ball set up with driver and you don't have room to swing the club because your body's in the way, it's very easy to end up jammed and you're going to foul it off to the right. Or when you get sick of it going right, then the club's going to work this way on the way down, and if we don't top it, we're going to hit it low left. If you think about it like a baseball player, it's no different. If I'm a batter and they're throwing a ball 100 miles an hour inside and I swing at it, if I get jammed, I'm going to foul it to the right. And if I get the bat way out in front early, well, then I'm going to hit it hard, but it's going to be foul left. And so it's the same thing with a golfer. If I'm too close to the ball, I'm in effect swinging at inside pitches on every swing, and it's going to produce inconsistent results. So distance away from the ball, there's a couple checkpoints. I like soling the club flat with driver that's just slightly toe up. This end ought to point at your belt buckle. You ought to have 6 or 8 inches from the end of the club to your belt buckle. You can lower this down and the grip end touches you right above the knees, another good checkpoint. So I like having this space, and you'll be a much better driver and you'll get a lot more consistent.
This one's from Henry. It's all about keeping your spine angle through the ball as you're making your golf swing.
Yeah, and we should. I'm pretty old school. The way I was taught was posture is 2 things in the golf swing. It's your spine angle and it's your knee flex. And the way I was taught growing up was that we wanted to maintain our posture during the swing. So we maintained our knee flex and we maintained our spine angle. As things have evolved and as clubs have become lighter and we're able to swing them much faster, and how far you can hit it with driver is really important these days for a competitive player. You see less and less of players that maintain their knee flex all the way through the swing. You see guys that are taught to jump and to use the ground to generate more force. I agree with that, but what you'll find is the best players still maintain their spine angle for the most part during their swing. And that number with a driver is usually around 50 degrees. So the question is correct. And the reason that's correct is because with our driver swing plane, most really good players swing a driver on a 50-degree angle. And if it's set up, I get my spine angle 90 degrees to the shaft angle of my driver, and I maintain that angle and I keep that on the way through, I'm going to be at a 50-degree shoulder tilt, pretty close, at least the way I figure it. And so I think it is important to maintain your spine angle. A couple great drills for that. You can simply this old David Ledbetter drill where you fold your arms across your shoulders and you maintain your angle here and you maintain your angle there. David Ledbetter was telling his students to do that every night for 50 or 100 swings while they were watching television. Still a pretty good idea. The other one I like is you can hold your lead hand. I'm a right-handed player, so it's my left hand. And as I slap with my backhand here at an impact position, you can see that I can feel what it feels like to maintain that correct spine angle too. So 2 pretty good drills. This one here, And then this hand here goes where this other hand is on the way through. And again, feeling that hand slap under there's a pretty good feeling at impact.
This is from Rick Roy. He says that he's going to be 74 in 3 weeks. This was about a month ago, so happy birthday, Rick.
Yep, happy birthday.
So hoping that he could hang in there long enough. I've been playing golf a little bit with some of my uncles. My Uncle Buddy is 83, and it's been really fun to get to play with him every once in a while, so it's awesome.
Yeah, that's one of the cool things about my job. I have kids as young as 4 or 5 that come see me, and I have several 90-year-olds that I still see regularly for lessons. So it's one of the cool things about this game is you can play it forever as long as you stay in pretty good shape.
Absolutely, yeah.
And the better you get, the older you get, the better chance you have of shooting your age.
Yeah, that's true. I saw a video the other day of some guy, I think he said 105 or something, and he was still out there and hitting the ball and smacking his club against the ground because he was a little angry.
Yeah, oh, for shoot out, it's still a hard game.
Yeah, absolutely.
And frustrating. But I have an uncle that I believe's 95, 94, 95, and he still plays once or twice a week.
Yeah,
and he shoots his age pretty much every time he goes plays.
Well, the neat thing too is that you can get, even if you lose some power on the full swing, you can get better and better at short game, and just that's stuff that doesn't require power as much as technique.
Yeah, and if you play from the correct tee and ground too. So, I mean, I'm going to be 65 in May, so my golf course nowadays where I have fun is around 6,000 yards.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, back when I was playing, I mean, you know, it was no big deal to play a 72 or 7,300 yard course.
Absolutely.
But nowadays I can't hit it far enough to have any fun from there. So I play most of my golf at about 6,000 yards. So
that's important to play the appropriate tees for where you're at.
Yep, absolutely.
This one's from AG. It's about grip strength and how firmly you should hold the club. We talked a little bit in a video about this famous Sam Snead quote about holding the club like a baby bird, and it's a little bit of clarification maybe on that topic.
Sure. And with Sam Hartelling, I mean, he tried to be a comedian about half the time anyway, so some of the Sam Snead stories are hilarious. One of my favorite, Patrick's asking me a question, I'm going to go off subject here, but one of my favorite Sam Snead stories, and you know, it's a story, I don't know if it's true or not, but I think it's a riot. And Sam worked after he retired from the tour, he would hang out at the Greenbrier in West Virginia, where he was from, and he would give a few lessons on the driving range, and he'd sit in his Adirondack chair on the driving range and have a vodka tonic. And if he wasn't busy, he would get in his golf cart and he'd go out to 15 or 16, and there'd be a group of members out there, and he'd say, "Hey boys, do you mind if I join you and play in with you?" And everybody, of course, would say, "Sam Snead, holy cow, sure, Sam," you know. And so Sam would join them, and he'd play 16, 17, 18. And then the next month in their bill, those 4 members would have a playing lesson charged for $250 a piece. And Sam would make $1,000 on their foursome, and send them a bill without them knowing about it. But I always thought that was classic. I'll probably get in trouble for saying that, but I always thought it was pretty funny. Other golf professionals watching this, I wouldn't recommend that. But to answer the question on grip pressure, I don't find with the tournament players that I've worked with, I always ask them about grip pressure and what their thoughts are. And I haven't found anybody that grips it lightly. And the reason for that is, especially if, you know, playing out of the rough, and with the speed that we swing the clubs these days, you have to have a very firm hold on the club. Now that being said, tension in the golf swing is a bad thing. So what I've found is that there's 2 rules of thought. And you have to also, like in Hogan's book, he talked about the pressure being with the last 3 fingers of the left hand, he was right-handed, and with the pincher fingers on these hands. But you have to understand that when a player talks about their grip pressure and anything about their grip, you have to understand what their issue is. So Hogan was a hooker, and so he was holding the club and hinging his hands on the way back in a position where it made it difficult for him to hit a hook. It was, you know, it was a myth for years that Hogan had a secret in the golf swing, but frankly, he just learned how not to hook it with the issues that he had as a younger player. And so if you're a hooker, it's not a bad idea to feel extra pressure with this top hand and those last 3 fingers of it, and it'll help you. Slicers, however, that's probably a bad thought. And so I frankly like slicers to think about their thumb and their forefinger having the pressure and with both fingers there, and that'll really help promote having your arms and hands flip over. And so the answer to the question on grip pressure, it kind of depends on what your ball flight is and what your issues are and what you're trying to correct. But as a general guideline, for most players, I like to feel equal grip pressure with every finger and thumb. I like them all to be consistent. And I like them to be firm enough that you can maintain that grip pressure all the way through your swing. And I find that people that hold the club too lightly at address, they always re-grip up here at the top and squeeze harder on the way down because their subconscious is just trying to hold on to the club and not lose it. And the worst thing you can do, especially for those players that might be watching this that have a problem with hooks and duck hooks, one of the things I see a lot is a re-gripping issue. Whenever I hold the club and I open my hand and then I re-grip it, the club head always closes. So if I'm here and I re-grip it, and when I squeeze it, I will close the face. And so my eye is good enough, I've given so many lessons, that I can watch somebody on the backswing. And I see a lot of players where they let go of the club with one or both hands, and I'm exaggerating it here, but then when they re-grip it, they turn the club in their hands and that club face is closed and they're hitting hooks. And their swing looks beautiful and nobody they go to can figure out why they're hooking it, and it's because they're re-gripping the club. And so if that might be you, think about that. Maintain the pressure with every finger and both thumbs consistently on the backswing and the transition, and you'll have a lot better results.
So this one accuses Ed of being wrong. I don't know about that.
I'm not
sure
perfect.
We're all wrong sometimes.
Yep. I thought I was wrong once, but I was mistaken. I'm just kidding.
Anyway, so this one's about forearm rotation and if a strong grip would either promote or reduce forearm rotation in the swing.
Yeah, it's a great comment. Frankly, I see lots of slicers that have really strong grips under and they have no rotation at all to hold it off. There's a lot of tour players with very strong grips that are faders of the ball because they can just hold that position at impact, and it's a pretty powerful and a pretty effective way to hit a golf ball. There's lots of different ways to hit a golf ball. I wouldn't say I'm wrong though, because in most cases, when a player's top hand gets in a stronger position, more to the right for a right-handed player, for most players it promotes more forearm rotation. If you're a good enough athlete to not rotate at all, it's a pretty powerful position. My opinion, if you look at Paul Azinger's swing in his prime, very strong left hand, he never let it rotate over, and he had low fades and was a great player. Didn't like playing at Augusta National, couldn't hit it up in the air high enough. But so I'm not necessarily wrong that a strong grip promotes forearm rotation. It just doesn't promote it in everyone.